The encounter. The grand halls of the Virinth Dominion's crystalline palace shimmered with an otherworldly glow, the walls pulsating faintly as if alive. Jace Vera, a human undercover agent, stood at the center of the vast chamber, his heart pounding in his chest. He had spent years perfecting the art of deception, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight of Queen Seraphine. She descended from her throne, her movements fluid and hypnotic. Her skin, a deep shade of amethyst, glowed faintly under the soft light, and her bioluminescent markings traced intricate patterns across her body. Her eyes, a piercing shade of silver, locked onto his, and Jace felt as if she could see straight through his carefully constructed facade. "You are not like the others," Seraphine said, her voice a melodic blend of power and curiosity. She circled him slowly, her golden robes flowing around her like liquid sunlight. "Most humans tremble in my presence. Yet you stand tall, unyielding. Why is that?" Jace forced a smirk, though his mind raced. "I assure you, Your Majesty, I am here only to serve as a diplomat. Earth wishes to strengthen our ties with the Virinth Dominion." Seraphine stopped inches from him, her warmth radiating like a star. "Diplomats do not carry themselves like soldiers," she murmured, her clawed fingers brushing against his collar. "Nor do they have eyes that betray a lifetime of secrets." Jace met her gaze, refusing to flinch. "Perhaps I am not like most diplomats." A slow smile spread across Seraphine's lips, and for a moment, the tension between them was palpable. "Walk with me," she said, turning gracefully and gesturing for him to follow. As they moved through the palace's inner chambers, Jace couldn't help but marvel at the alien beauty surrounding him. Bioluminescent flora twisted along the walls, casting shifting hues of blue and purple across the corridors. Virinth guards, their feline eyes tracking his every move, stood at attention as they passed. "You have been granted rare access," Seraphine remarked, her tone unreadable. "Few humans have set foot in these halls. Fewer still have left." Jace understood the unspoken warning. "I take it your people don't trust mine," he said. Seraphine stopped before a massive arched window that overlooked the sprawling Virinth capital. From here, Jace could see the glowing skyline, the floating spires of alien architecture, and the rivers of liquid light coursing through the city like veins of energy. "Would you?" she asked, her silver eyes reflecting the city's glow. "Our species were at war not long ago. The scars of that conflict run deep." Jace exhaled, his mind racing. "The war is over," he said carefully. "Perhaps it's time to focus on the future." Seraphine turned to face him fully, her expression unreadable. "Tell me, Jace Vera, do you believe in fate?" The question caught him off guard. "No," he replied after a moment. "I believe in strategy. In action. Fate is just an excuse for those who fear making choices." Seraphine studied him for a long moment, then let out a soft hum of approval. "A soldier's answer," she said. "And yet, I wonder, what will you do when the choice is before you demand more than duty?" Jace swallowed, his certainty wavering. He had arrived with a mission, to uncover the Queen's weaknesses and exploit them. But standing beside her, feeling the weight of her presence, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was the one being hunted. The days that followed were a blur of diplomatic meetings and covert reconnaissance. Jace played his part flawlessly, earning the trust of Seraphine's advisors while secretly gathering information. But with each passing day, he found himself drawn deeper into the enigmatic Queen's orbit. It was in the small moments that he noticed the change. The way Seraphine's gaze lingered on him when she thought he wasn't looking. The way her voice softened when they spoke alone. The way her presence, once intimidating, now felt like the only place he belonged. One evening, as the palace settled into quiet, Seraphine summoned him to the moonlit gardens. The air was thick with the scent of alien blossoms, and the glowing boughs of the trees cast a ghostly light across the path. "You saved my life," Seraphine said without preamble, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Why?" Jace crossed his arms, his heart pounding. I reacted. That's what I do. Seraphine stepped closer, her warmth enveloping him. You risked your life for an alien queen, she murmured. A queen whose people once sought to destroy yours. Why? Jace met her gaze, his resolve wavering. Maybe I don't see you as just an alien queen, he said quietly. Maybe I see you as something more. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Then, slowly, Seraphine reached up, her fingers brushing against his cheek. You are a dangerous man, Jace Vera, she whispered. And yet, I find myself unable to stay away. The air between them was charged, the tension no longer just political. Jace knew he was walking a dangerous line, but for the first time in his life, he didn't care. The mission had begun, but he had the distinct feeling that he was the one being ensnared. The dance of shadows. The palace was alive with whispers. Jace Vera moved through the corridors with practiced ease, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. The Virenth Dominion was a labyrinth of secrets, and he was determined to unravel them. But as the days turned into weeks, he found himself increasingly distracted by the enigmatic Queen Seraphine. Their encounters had become more frequent, each one leaving Jace more conflicted than the last. Seraphine was unlike anyone he had ever met, her intelligence, her grace, her quiet strength. She was a puzzle he couldn't solve, and yet, he couldn't stop trying. One evening, as the twin moons of Virenth cast their silvery light over the palace, Seraphine summoned Jace to her private chambers. The room was bathed in a soft, golden glow, the walls adorned with intricate tapestries that seemed to shift and shimmer as if alive. Seraphine stood by the window, her silhouette framed by the alien skyline. You've been busy, she said without turning, her voice calm but laced with curiosity. My advisors tell me you've been asking questions. Many questions. Jace hesitated, his mind racing. It's my job to understand your people, your majesty. Earth wants to ensure this alliance is built on trust. Seraphine turned to face him, her silver eyes piercing. Trust, she repeated, her tone thoughtful. A fragile thing, isn't it? Easily broken, difficult to rebuild. Jace met her gaze, his heart pounding. It is. But I believe it's worth fighting for. A faint smile played on Seraphine's lips. You are an intriguing man, Jace Vera. Most humans would shy away from such honesty. I'm not most humans, Jace replied, his voice steady. Seraphine stepped closer, her movements as fluid as water. No, she murmured, you are not. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension. Jace could feel the heat radiating from her, the faint scent of alien blossoms filling his senses. He knew he should pull away, should maintain the distance required by his mission. But he couldn't. Not when she looked at him like that. Tell me, Seraphine said softly, what do you see when you look at me? Jace swallowed, his throat dry. I see a leader. A queen. Someone who carries the weight of her people on her shoulders. Seraphine's gaze softened. And what else? Jace hesitated, then spoke the truth. I see someone who's lonely. Someone who hides her pain behind a mask of strength. For a moment, Seraphine said nothing. Then, to Jace's surprise, she let out a quiet laugh. You are perceptive, Jace Vera. Perhaps too perceptive for your own good. Before Jace could respond, the sound of alarms echoed through the palace. Seraphine's expression shifted instantly, her eyes narrowing as she turned toward the door. What is happening? A Virenth guard burst into the room, his feline eyes wide with urgency. Your Majesty, we are under attack. Jace's training kicked in immediately. Where? He demanded. The Grand Hall, the guard replied. An assassin has infiltrated the palace. Without a second thought, Jace grabbed Seraphine's arm. We need to get you to safety. Seraphine shook her head, her silver eyes blazing. No, I will not hide while my people are in danger. Jace hesitated, then nodded. Then stay close to me. They moved swiftly through the corridors, the palace now alive with chaos. The assassin was skilled, moving like a shadow through the halls. Jace's instincts screamed at him to protect Seraphine, to shield her from harm. But as they reached the grand hall, he realized the danger was far greater than he had anticipated. The assassin emerged from the shadows, a blade gleaming in his hand. Jace reacted instantly, stepping in front of Seraphine as the blade sliced through the air. The sharp edge caught his shoulder, sending a searing pain through his body. But Jace didn't falter. He twisted the assassin's arm, disarming him in one swift motion. Seraphine's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Enough. A wave of violet energy surged from her, lifting the assassin off the ground and suspending him midair. The hall fell silent, the Virenth guards staring in awe as their queen unleashed her power. Jace clutched his wounded shoulder, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Seraphine, he said, his voice strained. Don't kill him. We need to know who sent him. Seraphine's eyes flicked to Jace, the rage in her gaze momentarily softened by concern. You are hurt, she murmured. I'll live, Jace replied, though the pain was intense. Seraphine hesitated, then with a flick of her wrist, released the assassin. He crumpled to the ground, gasping for breath as the guards seized him. Jace swayed on his feet, the blood loss beginning to take its toll. Seraphine was at his side in an instant, her hand pressing against his wound. A surge of warmth flooded through him, the pain dulling as her power flowed into him. You are a fool, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. You could have died. Jace managed a weak smile. You keep saying that. Seraphine's fingers lingered on his skin, her touch sending a shiver down his spine. Why did you do it? She asked, her silver eyes searching his. Because, Jace said quietly, I couldn't let anything happen to you. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the world around them fading away. Then, slowly, Seraphine leaned in, her lips brushing against his in a kiss that was both tender and fierce. Jace's heart raced, his mind spinning as he kissed her back, the weight of his mission momentarily forgotten. When they finally pulled apart, Seraphine rested her forehead against his. This is dangerous, she whispered. I know, Jace replied, his voice barely audible. But I don't care. The forbidden bond. The days that followed the assassination attempt were a blur of tension and secrecy. Jace's wound healed quickly, thanks to Seraphine's power, but the emotional scars ran deeper. The palace was on high alert, and the Virenth advisors eyed Jace with suspicion. Yet, amidst the chaos, something undeniable had blossomed between him and Seraphine. Their meetings became more frequent, though always hidden from prying eyes. They would steal moments in the moonlit gardens, under the glowing boughs of the alien trees, or in the quiet corners of the palace where the walls seemed to pulse with their shared secrets. One night, as the twin moons cast their silvery light over the gardens, Seraphine led Jace to a secluded alcove. The air was thick with the scent of alien blossoms, and the soft hum of bioluminescent flora filled the silence. You've been quiet, Seraphine said, her voice soft but probing. What troubles you? Jace hesitated, his gaze fixed on the glowing horizon. I've been thinking about the assassin, he admitted. About who sent him and why. Seraphine's expression darkened. My advisors believe it was a faction within the Virenth Dominion. Those who oppose our alliance with Earth. Jace turned to her, his eyes searching hers. And what do you believe? Seraphine sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. I believe there are many who fear change. Who fear what our union could mean for the future. Jace reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. And what do you want, Seraphine? For a moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she intertwined her fingers with his. I want what I've always wanted, she whispered. Peace. Unity. A future where our people can thrive together. Jace's heart ached at the vulnerability in her voice. You carry so much on your shoulders, he said softly. You don't have to do it alone. Seraphine looked at him, her silver eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You don't understand, Jace. If my people were to discover what's between us, it could destroy everything. Jace stepped closer, his free hand cupping her cheek. Then let them destroy it, he said fiercely. Because I can't keep pretending that what I feel for you doesn't matter. Seraphine's breath hitched, her gaze locked on his. You don't know what you're asking, she whispered. I do, Jace replied, his voice steady. I'm asking you to trust me. To let me stand by your side, not as a spy or a diplomat, but as someone who cares about you. Deeply. For a long moment, Seraphine simply stared at him, her emotions warring on her face. Then, slowly, she leaned in, her lips brushing against his in a kiss that was both tender and desperate. Jace responded instantly, pulling her closer as the world around them faded away. The kiss deepened, their connection igniting like a star. Seraphine's hands tangled in his hair, her warmth enveloping him as she pressed against him. Jace's heart raced, his mind spinning as he lost himself in her. When they finally pulled apart, Seraphine rested her forehead against his, her breath coming in ragged gasps. This is madness, she whispered. Maybe, Jace replied, his voice husky. But it's a madness I'm willing to embrace. Seraphine's silver eyes searched his, her expression a mix of fear and longing. You don't know what you're getting into, she said softly. Then show me, Jace replied, his voice steady. Let me in, Seraphine. Let me share the burden. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. All right, she whispered. But know this, Jace Vera. If we do this, there's no turning back. Jace smiled, his thumb brushing against her cheek. I wouldn't want to. The betrayal. The palace was alive with whispers. The Virenth advisors had grown suspicious, their feline eyes narrowing every time Jace entered a room. He could feel their distrust like a weight pressing down on him, but he refused to let it show. His focus was on Seraphine, on the fragile bond they had forged in the shadows. Yet, even as their connection deepened, Jace couldn't shake the gnawing guilt in his chest. He had come to the Virenth Dominion with a mission, to uncover Seraphine's weaknesses and exploit them. But now, standing by her side, he couldn't bring himself to betray her. One evening, as the palace settled into quiet, Jace found himself summoned to the council chambers. The room was vast, its crystalline walls reflecting the soft glow of the bioluminescent flora. The Virenth advisors stood in a semicircle, their expressions unreadable. Seraphine sat at the head of the room, her silver eyes meeting Jace's with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Jace Vera, one of the advisors began, his voice cold and measured. We have received troubling reports about your activities within the palace. Jace's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his expression neutral. I'm not sure what you mean, he replied calmly. The advisor stepped forward, his feline eyes narrowing. We have reason to believe you are not who you claim to be. That you are, in fact, a spy sent by Earth to undermine our queen. The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud, the tension thick enough to cut. Jace's mind raced, his training kicking in as he prepared to deflect the accusation. But before he could speak, Seraphine rose from her seat, her presence commanding the room. Enough, she said, her voice sharp and authoritative. Jace Vera has proven his loyalty time and time again. He saved my life, and he has done nothing but work toward strengthening the alliance between our people. The advisor hesitated, his gaze flicking between Seraphine and Jace. Your Majesty, with all due respect, we cannot ignore the evidence. If he is a spy. If he is a spy, Seraphine interrupted, her silver eyes blazing, then he is the most dedicated one I have ever met. Until you have proof, I will not entertain these baseless accusations. The room fell silent, the advisors exchanging uneasy glances. Jace could feel their distrust, their suspicion, but he also saw the unwavering support in Seraphine's eyes. It was enough to steady his nerves. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said, bowing his head slightly. Seraphine nodded, her expression softening. "You are dismissed, Jace. We will speak later." As Jace left the council chambers, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. He knew the advisors wouldn't let this go, and he couldn't afford to let his guard down. But more than that, he couldn't bear the thought of betraying Seraphine. Later that night, Seraphine summoned Jace to her private chambers. The room was bathed in a soft, golden glow, the walls adorned with intricate tapestries that seemed to shift and shimmer as if alive. Seraphine stood by the window, her silhouette framed by the alien skyline. "You've been quiet," she said without turning, her voice calm but laced with curiosity. "What troubles you?" Jace hesitated, his gaze fixed on the glowing horizon. "The advisors," he admitted. "They're getting closer to the truth." Seraphine turned to face him, her silver eyes piercing. "And what is the truth, Jace?" Jace's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. He knew he should lie, should maintain the facade he had built. But looking into her eyes, he couldn't bring himself to do it. "The truth," he said slowly, "is that I came here with a mission. To gather intelligence on you and your people. To find your weaknesses and exploit them." Seraphine's expression didn't change, but Jace could see the flicker of pain in her eyes. "I see," she said softly. "But that's not why I'm here anymore," Jace continued, his voice steady. "I came as a spy, but I stayed because of you. Because I believe in you, Seraphine. In us." For a long moment, Seraphine said nothing. Then, slowly, she stepped closer, her movements as fluid as water. "You are a dangerous man, Jace Vera," she murmured. "But perhaps that is why I cannot stay away." Jace reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. "I don't want to betray you," he said quietly. "But I don't know how to reconcile my mission with what I feel for you." Seraphine's gaze softened, her silver eyes searching his. "Then let me help you," she whispered. "Let us face this together." Jace's heart ached at the vulnerability in her voice. "You don't know what you're asking," he said softly. "I do," Seraphine replied, her voice steady. "I'm asking you to trust me, just as I trust you." For a moment, Jace simply stared at her, his emotions warring within him. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right," he whispered. "We'll face this together." Seraphine smiled, her fingers intertwining with his. "Then let's begin." The Cosmic Reckoning. The tension in the Virenth Dominion was palpable. The advisors' suspicions had grown into open hostility, and Jace could feel the weight of their distrust pressing down on him. Yet, amidst the chaos, he and Seraphine had forged a plan to expose the true threat to their alliance and prove Jace's loyalty once and for all. It began with a message, delivered in secret to Seraphine's chambers. The message was cryptic, warning of an impending attack on the palace by a faction within the Virenth Dominion. The faction, led by a rogue advisor named Kale, sought to overthrow Seraphine and sever ties with Earth. "We need to act quickly," Seraphine said, her silver eyes blazing with determination. "If Kale's faction succeeds, it could mean war." Jace nodded, his mind racing. "We'll need evidence. Something concrete to expose Kale's plans." Seraphine's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then let's give him the opportunity to reveal himself." The plan was risky, but it was their only chance. Seraphine would announce a Grand Council meeting, inviting all the advisors to discuss the future of the alliance. Jace, meanwhile, would infiltrate Kale's quarters, searching for proof of his treachery. The night of the meeting, the palace was alive with activity. The grand hall was filled with Virenth advisors, their feline eyes gleaming in the soft light. Seraphine stood at the head of the room, her presence commanding as she addressed the council. "We stand at a crossroads," she began, her voice steady and strong. The alliance with Earth is not without its challenges, but it is a path worth pursuing. Together, we can build a future of peace and prosperity. As Seraphine spoke, Jace moved through the shadows, his training guiding him as he slipped into Kale's quarters. The room was dimly lit, the walls lined with shelves filled with ancient artifacts and scrolls. Jace's eyes scanned the room, searching for anything that could incriminate Kale. Then he saw it, a holographic device hidden beneath a stack of scrolls. Jace activated the device, his heart pounding as a series of messages and plans flickered to life. The evidence was damning, detailing Kale's plot to overthrow Seraphine and sabotage the alliance. Jace's communicator buzzed softly, and he activated it, keeping his voice low. "I've got it," he whispered. "Enough evidence to expose Kale." "Good," Seraphine's voice replied, calm but urgent. "Meet me in the Grand Hall. It's time to end this." As Jace made his way back to the Grand Hall, he could feel the tension in the air. The advisors were restless, their distrust of Seraphine's alliance with Earth evident in their expressions. Kale stood at the center of the room, his feline eyes gleaming with malice. "Your Majesty," Kale said, his voice dripping with false concern. "We cannot ignore the risks of this alliance. Earth cannot be trusted." Seraphine's gaze was steady, her silver eyes piercing. "And yet, it is not Earth that seeks to betray us," she replied. Kale's expression faltered, but he quickly recovered. "What are you implying?" "I'm implying," Seraphine said, her voice sharp and commanding, "that you, Kale, are the true threat to our people." The room erupted into chaos, the advisors turning to Kale with shock and anger. Jace stepped forward, holding up the holographic device. "This contains evidence of Kale's plot to overthrow the Queen and sabotage the alliance," he announced. Kale's eyes widened, his composure crumbling. "This is a trick," he shouted. "A human's deception." "No," Seraphine said, her voice calm but firm. "This is the truth. And it is time for you to face the consequences of your actions." The Virenth guards moved swiftly, seizing Kale and dragging him from the room. The advisors watched in stunned silence, their distrust of Jace slowly giving way to reluctant acceptance. As the room settled, Seraphine turned to Jace, her silver eyes filled with gratitude. "You have proven your loyalty," she said softly. "Not just to me, but to our people." Jace nodded, his heart swelling with relief. "I told you, Seraphine. I'm here for you. For us." Seraphine stepped closer, her warmth enveloping him. "Then let us move forward together," she whispered. "As partners. As equals." Jace smiled, his fingers brushing against hers. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Epilogue. The alliance between Earth and the Virenth Dominion grew stronger in the months that followed. Jace and Seraphine's bond became a symbol of unity, their love transcending the boundaries of species and politics. Together, they faced the challenges of leadership, their partnership inspiring hope and change across the galaxy. As they stood together under the glowing Virenth skyline, Jace couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. He had arrived as a spy, driven by duty and deception. But now, he was something more, a partner, a protector, and a man deeply in love. "What do you see when you look at the future?" Seraphine asked, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. Jace smiled, his hand tightening around hers. "I see us," he replied. "Building a future where our people can thrive together. Where love and trust are stronger than fear and doubt." Seraphine's lips curved into a smile, her warmth radiating like a star. "Then let's make it happen," she whispered. And as they stood together, their hearts entwined under the cosmic sky, Jace knew that their journey was just beginning. The end.